everyone. My name is Heather O'Donnell from Indeed, and this is the Jobcast. Today, we're talking about ageism in the job search, a topic that has been brought up frequently in past Jobcasts. The mature workforce, which is age 55 plus, is expected to make up a quarter of employed U.S. adults by 2026. It's the fastest growing age group in the workforce. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced many to return to work and or make a career pivot, amplifying the importance of addressing ageism on all levels. And here's why we're here today. 76% of older workers see age discrimination as a hurdle to finding a new job. And let's be clear, the issue of ageism in hiring is not in your head, and you aren't the only one experiencing it. While many employers may not intend to discriminate on the basis of age, we know it happens. Another thing I want to make clear, the responsibility for avoiding discrimination in the hiring process should fall on employers, not on you as a job seeker. It's not fair that you have to sit here today to get tips for avoiding ageism, but we know that this is the world we live in. So we want to help as much as possible. In this workshop, we're going to cover why age bias exists, signs of potential ageism in the hiring process, resume tips for mature candidates, and how to help avoid age bias in your interview. And today we'll be talking to two professionals from Goodwill. Sonja Johnson is Career Services Manager of CSEP for Goodwill Industries of Kentucky. And Jim Kenney is Program Manager of CSEP, Goodwill of the Olympics and Rainier region. It's our pleasure and honor to have both of you here. So let's start about why age bias exists in the workplace. We know that there are actual benefits of hiring older workers. Older workers can be more loyal to their employers and stay at a company longer. In fact, according to a 2019 survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, baby boomers held an average of 12.3 jobs from ages 18 to 52, with nearly half being held before age 25. They can offer a strong set of skills and experience. Older workers may have decades of industry experience, skills, and expertise that's difficult to teach. They can also serve an important role as mentors. They also might have, and probably do have, strong networks to bring to your business. Since they've been in the workforce longer, older workers may have had more time to establish an extensive network of clients and contacts. Older workers can bring different perspectives and ideas. Multiple viewpoints lead to better decision-making and problem-solving. The perspective of a 60-year-old, for example, can provide insight that a 25-year-old just might not have yet. And research also suggests that multi-generational teams are simply more productive and have less turnover than teams of all the same age. And we know that diversity in general is something that lends itself to high-performing teams. So diversity of thought, diversity of race, age, other ethnic backgrounds, education. So diversity is definitely something that helps high-performing teams succeed. Despite those benefits, however, according to a 2017 national survey by AARP of adults over 45, 60% of respondents reported having seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace. Older women, African Americans, Hispanics, and those who are unemployed were more likely to feel they were the subject of discrimination. Let's talk about myths about older workers. Discrimination of any kind is rooted in fear of differences. And some employers may cite concerns over hiring older candidates. These concerns are essentially myths, which persist when we don't have evidence to contradict them. These myths create widespread challenges, with the result that older workers may face bias when applying for jobs or feel that they are being pressured into premature retirement. Meanwhile, pushing older workers out of sight perpetuates the negative stereotype that they don't belong. And these probably aren't new to you. A myth is that older workers are counting the days until retirement. Employers may think you're burnt out and can't wait to stop working, when in fact, many older workers are eager to extend their careers. And it's not just for the money, but also for friendly colleagues, respect, and an opportunity to use your skills for a worthwhile project. Many also find that working keeps them mentally and physically active and socially connected. And ultimately, many older workers want to stay engaged on the job, but with the flexibility to enjoy this new stage of life or new stage of their careers, preferring part-time work. Another common myth is that older workers don't have the necessary skills to succeed in today's workplaces. In reality, many older Americans by now have had home computers for over 30 years. We all live in a digital world, encompassing email and smartphones, ebooks, virtual assistants, and more. And Americans aged 50 to 64 rely on today's technologies as much as the overall population. What's more, many older workers express a desire to continue learning and growing professionally. Far from being burnt out, they perform well at tasks that utilize their years of professional knowledge, experience, and critical thinking skills, and are excited to put their talents to use while learning new marketable skills. But aren't older workers uncomfortable reporting to younger managers? This is also a myth, and it equates age with on-the-job seniority, and it's outdated in today's multi-generational workplace. Maybe some younger managers are uncomfortable managing people with more experience than they have. It's possible accepting directions from someone much younger could be difficult, but if managers respect what employees of any age know, then older workers aren't as likely to get resentful. Encouraging positive relationships between younger managers and older workers upends traditional ideas about leadership and challenges ageist assumptions. By supporting both older employees and younger managers, employers provide new models of seniority at work and actively challenge this bias in action. Another myth is that older workers will only accept high salaries. While it might be the case that seasoned workers expect to be paid in line with their experience, they wouldn't apply if it were impossible for them to live on that salary. If an applicant knows what the job pays and is still interested, it should be up to that applicant to make that decision. Signs of potential ageism in the hiring process. So when searching for a job, you likely have a list of non-negotiables and preferences, such as company values, salary, benefits, leadership style, and more. These are great ways to filter your job search to find the best, most relevant opportunities for you. If you're a mature job seeker, another employer quality you might want to consider is age diversity tolerance. Or in other words, a culture built and maintained to equally support, employ, and advance individuals regardless of age. One way to do this in the job search phase is by paying close attention to the language employers use during the hiring process, starting with the job posting. Age discrimination in job descriptions are sometimes pretty obvious. For instance, when companies advertise that they're looking for someone young or a recent college grad. However, ageist language can be more subtle. Things like fresh or tech savvy, digital native. You might see flexible, energetic, active, high potential. Language like this is often coded and refers to young candidates. And if you see it in a job description, it might signal that the employer or culture might not be supportive and inclusive. And I should point out that Indeed takes this very seriously. And we have steps in place to remove job postings that include the phrase digital native or new graduate through our search quality team. They monitor job postings that might be discriminatory. Age bias in the screening stage is very common and often unconscious. Hiring managers might do this by ignoring applicants with a college graduation date over 20 years ago, or disregarding applicants with a resume longer than 3 pages, passing on an applicant because they don't have a social media presence, rejecting applicants that have email addresses that end in @hotmail.com or @AOL.com. So during the interview, the hiring manager might blatantly ask questions related to your age, like your birth year or graduation date. But they may also signal age bias through questions like, when do you expect to retire? Are you comfortable working for a younger manager? Can you keep up with our company's technology demands? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Do you have any chronic diseases or other health issues? In addition, if you have multiple interviewers, pay attention to how age diverse the panel is. With all of that in mind, and I know it's a lot, it also might be helpful to research the values and the company culture before you apply for jobs in order to find the right company for you. Indeed's company pages are a great place to find information about an employer from current and former employees. Indeed recently launched a new feature on our company pages called the Work Happiness Score. And the Work Happiness Score goes beyond the typical employee reviews to show how employees might actually feel at work there. Indeed's research, developed with global academic partners, has identified 13 dimensions of work happiness, and they include trust, appreciation, support, inclusion, and belonging. So if a company has a low score for inclusion, as an example, that could be a sign of potential bias in that workplace. So Jim, let me turn it over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Kenney. Currently, I'm, as Heather mentioned, the program manager for the Senior Community Service Employment Program out in Tacoma, Washington.
And Jim, can you talk about modernizing your resume?
Sure. In terms of modernizing your resume, that is going to be a key thing. The resume has evolved, quite frankly, and that process has evolved over the last, and it keeps changing. So it's really key to be tailoring it and looking at, is there a new format for resumes? Is there, and also for your industry that you're applying for jobs, do they have specific ways of dealing with the resume when you're making your application? It's really key to format your resume appropriately. And be aware of that. As Heather was saying, even in terms of the number of pages, a lot of people with experience needing to cull it down, making sure that it's 1 page primarily, 2 maximum kind of thing. Anything more than that probably is only if you're going to apply for a senior level kind of position where they may be requiring that kind of information. But in general, it's 1 to 2 pages. The other thing is to ensure that it's a 1/2 inch to 1 inch margins. It is really critical that it's very readable, and I can't stress that enough. Just like with interviews, where the first 30 seconds in an interview can be make or break whether they really consider you any longer than that, even if you're sitting there for an hour interview. For a resume, if it does get through to someone, it's usually in the first 7 to 10 seconds when someone is scanning it, that if it's just chock full of information crammed in, just speaking from professional experiences, like, quite frankly, the human resource person could be looking through 50 to 100 resumes. So if you've got everything and it just is a mess, it looks like a mess, and it's difficult to read, they'll just put it aside and you won't be considered. The next thing is to easy to read font throughout, which is the size of 10 to 12, usually Arial or Calibri, or if there's a specific font that the industry and the organization that you're applying for requires that. There's lots of different templates that you can use, and it's always my suggestion is when you do create a resume, have a couple of people look at it and review it, just to make sure that it's readable, but also that you're including all the information that needs. Just having different perspectives and perceptions on how, if they're seeing the same things that you're trying to reach to those companies. Yeah. With regards to the top part of the resume and your contact information, with regards to your name, it's not a legal document, so you can have your, for me, James, I'll have Jim. The other part is your email address. And that is a key thing to do. It has to be a very professional sounding email. Gmail is the big thing, but it's important to keep it very professional. And the reason I raise that is because people sometimes don't realize that their email address can give the wrong impression to an employer. And I use the example of years ago when I was in a mental health agency. One of the individuals who applied for a job as a clinician, case manager, their email address was crazycook@soandso.com. And so I had to actually, have a conversation with them. It's like, well, I would have considered you, but quite frankly, I didn't know whether you were serious about applying for this job or not by using that email. So you don't want to give the wrong impression. You no longer have to give your home address. Your city and or your state is fine. With your phone number, most likely at this point in time, most people use their cell phone as their primary point of contact and return. So that it's good to have that, but it's also, with regards to the phone number, it's important to make sure that your message on your cell phone is professional sounding. The funny things that you might put on your voicemail or your home answering machines in years past, when you're looking for a job, that's not the way you want to be presenting yourself when someone's reaching out to you about setting up an interview. Because many times now your first interview could be a phone screening.
That's so true, Jim. So, let's talk about de-emphasizing your education.
Yes. With regards to your education, most of us probably graduated years and years ago, 20 or 30, 40. I cringe a little bit when I say that. Yes, my 40th graduation reunion for college was just a year ago. But it is moving your education down to the bottom of your resume at the very end. And it's also an area where you might want to be putting your certificates and your licensures potentially. The top part of your resume is more around your specific job experiences and so forth. Remove your attendance and graduation dates. Graduating from college 40 years ago may give the impression that you really are not keeping up with what's happening currently in the field, which is not the case for most of us. You don't need anything like your GPA or coursework, because again, 20 years ago, college courses and things like that have changed and evolved dramatically during that time frame. Again, as we mentioned earlier, tell your resume to be that software tracking friendly thing, so you'll get through that screening process. And again, it's also including the keywords from the job description and any other information that you can gather from conversations with individuals from that organization, possibly an HR person from that organization, but tailoring it and making sure that you're capturing those words that are directly tied to the job description. The importance of emphasizing your recent experience and impacts on it. You don't go back more than 15 years ago. They're looking for more current kind of things that you've experienced and what you've brought to the table, removing experiences that do not add value for your role. Like if you were in between jobs somewhere and you're filling in just to have to do something and earning it a little bit of an income, you don't need to do that. primarily focus on the jobs that were related to what you're going to be applying for. Mm-hmm. And it's also important that you describe that impact. Sometimes your job title doesn't necessarily show all the responsibilities you had within that job, quite frankly. For many of us, for me, program manager, my role is very, very broader than that. And so it would be focusing on all those networking things, development of contracts, performance outcomes in those positions that show that you were part of a team that created a project that improved outcomes and productivity for the organization by 60%. Something along those lines, really focusing on the value added.
Yeah, anything quantifiable, right, Jim? Anything that you
right. The more quantifiable, the better. If you're just putting out there, I did this project, but not really show what were the results of that you brought more partnerships to the organization, or things. But specifically say, I brought 70 new partners to the company. Again, that just highlights the positive impact that you have had on the organization.
Right. And as a general rule, it's better to use percentages instead of raw numbers, but I'm sure there are exceptions. Sonja, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Sonja Johnson. I am the Career Services Manager for Goodwill Industries of Kentucky for the Older Worker Program. It is the Senior Community Service Employment Program, and I appreciate you inviting us to this Jobcast.
Love to hear about how to avoid age bias during an interview.
Unless you happen to look younger than you are, your age is probably obvious once you get to the interview stage of your application with the organization. Preparing for your interview ahead of time can help you appear calm and confident, as well as help you to address any inappropriate age-related comments or questions. This applies to everyone. In advance of your interview, explore opportunities to participate in mock interview workshops. There's thousands out there. They're online. They're at your local job centers. There are other workshops that you can get into that will help you with interview tips. And the best thing that you can say is practice, practice, practice. Practice with your friends and your family, especially if it's been some time since your last interview. Be prepared to answer questions that hidden age questions are involved in. Have your response ready to tactfully address how you can contribute positively to the position that you're applying for. Have questions prepared for the interviewer. This will not only address their concerns, but show that you are ready to join them in overcoming their biases.
Yeah, and let's talk about some best practices in interviewing, Sonja.
Some of interviewing best practices, which you see, are meant to directly counter those myths we've talked about earlier. Emphasize your excitement for the role instead of your wealth of experience. For example, you might show that you're excited about the opportunity by studying their business model and their mission. Come to the table with more knowledge about them than they have about you. Don't be afraid to make it personal. Employers need to know how you will interact and overcome the ideas of addressing the age stigmatism. You know you are qualified. You know what you can bring to the position that you are there to apply for and to fill. Focus on the positive things that you can bring to the company and what you will be willing to do to bring the position to a different level.
And collaboration skills are also very highly valued in today's workforce. So prioritize them as much as you can in the interview as well.
Yes. You want to also express your willingness to succeed and to join the company. Companies need to know what your contribution can be and how it will benefit them for you to be part of their team. Expand on how you see yourself in this position and how you can take it to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And then, indicate your ability to be self-sufficient as well, right, Sonja?
Right. Employers value self-aware candidates who are able to find answers to simple questions, identify their strengths and weaknesses, and identify ways to improve. You're there to do a job, but you're also there to help the company move forward or help the department move forward. And anyone who is interviewing you in a management position is going to appreciate that you can follow directions, but that you can also be self-sustaining and get through the day without interrupting them as well. You need to communicate your ability to work with different people. Diversity in age is equally as important as the workforce is diversity in race, culture, ideas, gender, or more. It's important to express how you value working with people who are different from you and how you might resolve inevitable conflict professionally when it arises. No one wants a troublemaker, so you want to express your views in a platonic way and let them know that you are on board with all of their morals and values that is supported by the organization. You also want to show genuine interest in your interviewer, asking thoughtful, smart questions about your interviewer. Their role in the organization can help build a connection with you and the interviewer. Doing so is going to build a rapport and encourage a positive experience for both parties during the interview. Your good resume got you in the door, and your interview is what is going to make the connection with you and the organization and make that step if you're going to go forward with employment. You want to use confident, calm body language throughout your interview. Make eye contact. Don't be afraid to smile. You don't have to dress in a way that you won't feel comfortable. Simply show up in clean, tidy clothing that makes you feel confident. If you're unsure, business casual is always the safe option to take. Many current interviews are virtual now and not in person, but appearances is still a major contributor to the impression you leave on the interviewer, not only for your attire, but also pay attention to the surroundings that are around you that may be captured in your video. Minimal personal items and distractions are the most favorable backdrops for video conferencing. If your interviewer makes comments about or asks questions related to age, politely ask clarifying questions or simply steer the conversation back towards the job. For example, if they ask something like, how long do you plan to work, or where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Simply say something like, at this stage in my career, I want to employ my background to serve a mission I care about, like yours, and then feed into what you know about their organization and their mission. Technology is not a barrier for most older workers. The up-and-coming baby boomers are getting into their 50s and 60s. So we've all had computers for 30 or 40 years, but many employers are conducting virtual interviews now instead of the in-person face-to-face interviews. And Zoom or video conference technologies may be harder for the older individual or mature worker because those are things that they've not been exposed to. As we said earlier, one big concern those hiring managers have is how our older candidates have the ability to use today's technology. You may have a smartphone, but that doesn't mean that you're accustomed to FaceTime or video conferencing. The best thing that you can do to prepare yourself is download any necessary apps that you're going to need for those interviews prior to. Make sure that they work on your phone. Make sure that you understand the controls. Check your webcam, your microphone, and your audios are working. Check your internet connection and make sure that you're not downloading anything in the background or that anything is interfering with your connection, because try as you may, sometimes you just can't overcome those internet connection problems, can we? You also want to find flattering lighting and angle for your video. All these things will help you show the interviewer that you're prepared, that you're in the technology age, and that you're willing to take all of your skills and move forward into their workforce.
All of these things will help show the interviewer that you're prepared. It can help to research common interview questions in general, as well as for your specific industry. It's also helpful to prepare for behavioral interview questions that test your situational skills and ability to respond thoughtfully on your feet. Use the STAR response method in these cases. You may have heard about this before or heard it called the CAR method, where C stands for challenge. This works the same way. STAR stands for situation, task, action, results. Use this technique to give your answers a deliberate story arc that hiring managers can easily follow. Craft your story to address the following questions. What is the context of your story? What was your role in the situation? What did you do? And what did your actions lead to? If you haven't interviewed in a while, you have to practice. It's so important. And practice your STAR responses to common interview questions like, tell me about yourself, or why do you want this job? Why should I hire you? Why are you leaving your current role? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Questions like that. The STAR method will help you prepare your answers in a beneficial way. So let's recap. Understand that ageism exists because stereotypes of older workers are more widespread than the benefits of older workers. Be aware of signs of ageism in job postings, applicant screenings, and interviews. Research companies to identify inclusive workplaces that reflect your values. Modernize your resume by updating your formatting and content to include relevant keywords and emphasize impact. And lastly, prepare for interviews by following best practices to counteract myths about older workers. And don't forget to practice. So let's go on to Q&A. The first question that came up is, at what age would you be considered a mature worker? And really, it depends on the data source. The US Senate statistic we mentioned earlier in the presentation says 55 plus, but AARP research shows workers 45 plus experience age discrimination. Subjectively, I'd say it's largely about how you see yourself and how others see you. The second question is, isn't it illegal for employers to discriminate based on age? So employers are not allowed to discriminate against applicants on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or age, according to applicable anti-discrimination laws. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission website is a great resource to find information and guidance on protections afforded by anti-discrimination laws. While many employers may not intend to discriminate on the basis of age, again, we know that unconscious bias can happen. So the more prepared you are by understanding these biases, the more confident you can be in your ability to overcome them. The next question is, if you leave out jobs not relevant to the position you're applying for, does the gap in employment then become an issue? If you want to avoid a gap on your resume, you can list the company, role, and date, but exclude further bullets that will take up real estate. I wouldn't be too worried about that, though. Based on Indeed research and interviews with employers, a gap on a resume is not a deal breaker if the candidate is qualified for the role. If you do have an employment gap, you can check out the jobcast called Back to Work. Does ageism impact men and women differently? As a woman, I've felt that aging is unacceptable, and there's so much pressure to color your hair, wear makeup, stay fit, etc. A double whammy of age and gender discrimination. It seems aging is more acceptable if you're male. Is there any research about this or insights specifically for women to help us overcome ageism along with gender discrimination? I definitely hear you. I'll be 48 in the fall. I do feel a pressure, just like you, to do the things that you've mentioned. But there is research. If you go to one of our partners called Catalyst, there is a study that talks about how older workers and women in particular can help fill the growing talent shortage. And the fastest growing population of the workforce are women aged 55 and over, and they will constitute more than 1/3 of new hires joining the workforce from 2016 to 2026. And so the misperception that age affects ability leads a lot of companies to create workplaces that are very quick to welcome young people and even quicker to dismiss older employees. However, older employees, especially older women, can contribute to companies, right? We talked about this a lot today, improving both business results and work culture. So focus on the things that we talked about during the webinar today. Definitely update your resume. Focus on the impact you want to make in the organization. You definitely have more experience than a lot of people. And it's not that you want to discount that, but you want to highlight more what you can bring to the organization now. Experience often leads to better outcomes. Make sure you point out that you are applying for a role for a reason other than how much you might make. Again, it's about impact and finding a purpose-driven company. And again, a diverse team is a happier team, right? So if you have diversity of age, race, culture, education, all of those things, there's research that backs that lends itself to a high-performing team. Why is it considered a negative when you're overqualified? So I would say here that the majority, or the major reason rather, why it's considered a negative by some employers is because they make an assumption that you're going to want to make more money. Or be paid a higher salary. The other reason could be, that an assumption again that you might want to retire in a short amount of time, or again, all the other things we talked about in the webinar today. So those are the main reasons why it sometimes is considered a negative when someone is overqualified. Another reason might be they might think that you might get bored in the role. But that's probably not the case for you because you're a job seeker looking for a job that's meaningful to you. So emphasize what's meaningful to you about the role you're applying for and why you're applying for it. So I thank everyone for all of their questions. I think we went through some really valuable information. Please reach out to the Jobcast. And on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe or comment as well. And we appreciate your attendance. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.